like to just kind of kick things off by giving a big shout out and thank you to Your Castle Real Estate and Pine Financial. Can we give them a big round of applause? By a quick show of hands, how many of you guys in here have read the Rich Dad Poor Dad series? At least one of the books. That's usually how it works. What I'm here to teach you guys today is how to take that information and put it on steroids. And we've been teaching this now for about a dozen years. I stumbled into this information in roughly 2005, and it has changed everything about the way that I see money in banks. And really, it's the art of proper leveraging. We're going to show you guys how you can truly turn other people's money into a cash flowing empire, but take it steps beyond what the author of Rich Dad taught us. His name is Robert Kiyosaki, for those of you that have not read the book. I would highly recommend it. Now, this class, unfortunately, is going to be condensed because of the window that we have. So 50 minutes is just not enough time for us to teach you everything you need to know about the 3 steps. So what I'm going to do today is something a little special. We're going to deep dive into the fundamentals of how this process works. And the mathematics will be explained to you further in our YouTube channel, where we provide a breakdown of all the arithmetic. And then we're going to be providing every single person in here an opportunity to have a free coaching session with me directly. And that'll be a 60-minute conversation. It'll be one-on-one over the phone, very convenient. And we're going to take a look at your mathematics and circumstances to show you exactly how this works. In the meantime, today, I'm going to show you really the foundation of what you'll need to know to benefit from this information. So let's go ahead and dive in. The class today is known as Secrets to Acquiring Unsecured Capital. We're going to use that capital to build our wealth through debt. All right, a little bit about VIP. Just to give you a brief breakdown, we've been around since 2000. We now teach tens of thousands of people every single month, mostly online. However, I'm in anywhere between 1 to 3 states per week sharing this information to various audiences. We've become known as the leading experts on cash flow, debt, and credit. And we now have expert coaching all over the world. We do focus primarily here in the United States, but that's how we generate our revenue. I will say that only 1 out of 4 members are a good fit. In reality, people that come to our classes often are not yet ready for this information. This will not be for all of you. There are a couple of components that are going to be very important for you to succeed with this. We're going to talk about that. Normally, it's not a matter of whether or not this will benefit you, but when it will benefit you the most. We do have countless reviews. I would encourage you to take a look at that. Just Google search VIP Financial Education when you have a minute. I'm a 3rd generation native here in Denver, so we are corporately headquartered here in Colorado. With the rush to this market, it's been a real incredible ride to watch what's changed. But would you guys agree that inventory has been a big problem here in Denver? So is it common that you guys might lose out to investors that have more than you have, whether it be more money or more opportunity or just generally more resources? Is that a fair assumption to make? So we're going to try and fight through that today. You can see countless success stories of people here in the local market. I'm going to talk about some of those today and the results. If you guys see anything from those results that excites you, that's where that one free coaching session will be very beneficial. So we're going to jumpstart everyone. We're going to do that through a cash flow cruncher and the one-on-one call. The cash flow cruncher spreadsheet is a very dynamic and comprehensive worksheet that I have seen benefit hundreds of investors around the country over the last couple of years. This spreadsheet is a free gift for you as well. When you schedule your one-on-one conversation with me, you'll be emailed a copy of this cash flow cruncher. If you have a notepad handy, I'm going to give you a website where everybody can get access to that cash flow cruncher as well. Write down the website cashflowcruncher.com. There will be a free quick start guide there where you can input some general data. This does not require any sensitive information from you at all. No account numbers, no social security numbers. It will only require general balances, payments, income, and personal expenses. And after those are input, it will calculate not just your cash flow, but a number of formulas that will help you expedite literally every single financial goal that you have. It is a tremendous tool. So that'll be a courtesy from us to you as well. Now, if you're unfamiliar with our classes, we've done a lot of education here in Colorado over the last 12 years, so many of you may have seen some of our trainings before, but we teach all over the country, me specifically. We teach for national radio, we even teach our classes to NASA at Johnson and Kennedy Space Centers. The information we share is not just for investors. Any of you who have that entrepreneurial mindset or want to get involved in real estate or are already active in real estate will benefit tremendously from this. We have literally built millions of dollars of revenue ourselves by just using the 3 steps that I'm going to teach you here today. So you can see a long list of people that have continuously brought us in, including the police department, Fraternal Order of Police. This is Jim May here at North Glen, Chief of Police, that's sharing a little bit about his story. There's actually an 8-minute video you can find online on our YouTube channel. I'm going to give you that channel here so that you guys can all go back in and revisit all the information we're talking about. We do have an A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau. I'd like to point that out. People that are in the debt and credit space often struggle to even get accredited with the Better Business Bureau. So this is something we're very, very proud of. And here's what we're here to learn today. This is from Reggie. I was approved for $36,000 in the first few weeks, and it doesn't even show on my credit reports. How would you guys like to have access to capital that's invisible to your credit reports? Does that sound like it would help you out? Okay. I'm using that to close on my first multifamily unit property next month, using no money of my own and $1,100 in positive cash flow. This is the type of success stories that we're seeing over and over and over again by getting access to other people's money. The step further that we take this is accelerating the timeline with which we pay things back. Let me get a quick temperature of the room here by asking how many people in here believe that the banks are building their rules to benefit us? Anyone? It's interesting, I don't see a lot of hands when I ask that question. If the banks get what they want, guys, how long will all of us as borrowers remain in debt? Forever. We'll die with it, right? So would it make sense to consider how we might be able to rewrite the way that we repay loans in order to pay them off in 20 or 25% of the time, where we can take 30-year loans on long-term rentals and pay them off in, say, 5, 6, 7 years and own those properties completely free and clear? Do you guys like the idea of a free and clear portfolio? Now, a lot of people argue, well, the interest rates are so great. Record low interest rates, why wouldn't we continue to leverage those and just get more money? The argument that I would make to that is, what if you could do both? What if it's not about one or the other? What if it's not about keeping a mortgage so that you can get more loans and buy more? What if you could acquire at the same pace or even faster and still eliminate your balances in a small fraction of the time? That's what these tools we're going to talk about today will allow you to do. So today, in order to actually benefit from such a short class, here are the 3 steps. Number 1, take your notes, write down questions. We're not going to have a lot of time to address these questions today, but we will address them one-on-one when we speak on the phone. So make sure you write those down and keep them, because the second part of this is customized completely to your circumstances. Everyone in here has a different set of financial circumstances, so it's very important for us to say, how do the 3 steps we're going to talk about apply to your unique financial fingerprint? It is first come, first serve. This is the website that you'll visit to schedule that free one-on-one coaching session with me personally. GetYourSession.com. Now, this is a first come, first serve process. I obviously have limited availability in my schedule. We've done everything to purge that calendar. We normally have a 4 to 12 week wait in my availability. So there is some windows that are not common there now. I would recommend if at any point I say something that resonates with you, or you hear something that excites you about your own circumstances, that you just pull out your smartphone and reserve your session now. So this is free to everybody here today. Now, a couple quick mathematical requirements to benefit from our time together. The first is at least $500 per month in leftover cash flow. So we define cash flow as the difference between all streams of income minus 100% of our expenses. Other people call it disposable income, discretionary income, whatever you choose to call it, it's the same thing. As long as you have at least $500 on average, there will be significant mathematical benefit to this conversation. The second is you've got to have a mortgage now or plan to get one within the next 18 months. How many people in here, by a show of hands, believe in the power of leveraging? Raise your hands. Okay? You guys understand how much faster you go by relying on other people's money before you have to worry about saving it for yourselves. This is obviously the power of the rich dad concepts. So a mortgage is a very important piece to real estate. What we're going to do is accelerate that process significantly. So if you choose to get a mortgage or you haven't already, this will be a very beneficial conversation. We do have to touch on the personality aspect of this because, frankly, it is the biggest showstopper for people trying to benefit from the mathematical side. If you're not coachable, if you're unwilling to be stretched out of your current comfort zone, if it's too much to be told that perhaps the way you've been banking now for the last however many years or decades is wrong, then this isn't going to be a good fit. We find that people have to have that courage to do things a new way, and it requires consistency and patience. Nothing about what I'm going to teach any of you here today has anything to do with getting rich quickly. This has everything to do with banking intelligently. If we all agree that the bank tools aren't built for us, then it's easy to accept that it's probably costing us more than it has to, and it's taking longer than it has to. So when you're told there's another faster way, you've got to actually implement it to get the value. So make sure that you come into this with these expectations, and by doing so, you can do very well. You will not fail. Math will not let you down. It's impossible. One last time, getyoursession.com is the website. We are only accepting appointments on this calendar that are scheduled before 5 p.m. today. So you've got to schedule before 5 p.m. to get that session honored. All right, so here are the 3 steps that we're using to dominate the banks, guys. Write each of these down. Very, very important. We're going to deep dive into each one of these today, and then I'm going to give you the VIP YouTube channel so you can go in and actually double check all the mathematics. So you can see here, step number 1 is optimization of credit. These are your personal and business credit profiles. When people think of credit, they often get stuck thinking just about credit scores. We go much further than this. This is all about looking and sounding the way the banks need you to look and sound in order for them to feel comfortable lending to you. And these lending conditions change as the economy changes. Would you guys agree that the economy here in Denver is pretty smoking hot right now? How do you feel about the idea of that, of an impending downturn? Do you feel like that's a possibility? Okay? We all agree that it's going to happen, it's just a matter of when, right? So when that happens, what happens with the bank lending? Does the liquidity get looser or tighter? So it becomes that much more difficult to get access to the money we need. Only the people that look the best to the banks are going to be the ones that get access. So in some ways, it's a bit of a foot race to get access to many of these tools before the economy changes. And at the same time, it's a matter of constant optimization so that we are always looking as good as we can so that even when the downturn happens, we're still in a position to get access to more money. We're going to talk about that in the second step here. Number 2, leveraging our strong credit profiles in order to get access to unlimited amounts of capital. When I say unlimited, I'm talking hundreds of thousands of dollars, and that can be annually. Hundreds of thousands of dollars that we did not have access to previously, completely liquid, that we can use for any reason whatsoever in order to advance our financial goals. We've used these both in and outside of real estate investing. The third is just that. How do we utilize these debt weapon vehicles? You can see we use the acronym DWs. This is a term that we created a dozen years ago. People have an easy time remembering it. Debt weapons we're going to talk about here shortly, but it ultimately allows us to explode our cash flow. If you look at this screen here, there are only 2 ways to grow cash flow, folks. It's make more money and what? Spend less money, right? Only 2 ways. The goal is to be able to do both. We're going to show you how these debt weapons give us the unique ability to balance our objectives from both the optimization of asset growth as well as the optimization of limiting liabilities, equaling eliminating debts. One thing that you'll find very popular about our teaching is that we are not here to force people onto a budget. It is not about ratcheting back on things we enjoy spending our money on that might not necessarily be necessary, right? These are things like $6 coffees at Starbucks and eating out and traveling and all of these other very expensive things that most financial educators will discuss first giving up. This isn't about giving up any of that. What we want to do is give up the interest costs. The way that we do that is through 3 very simple processes. These techniques are known as lump sum payments. This is where we're going to be using our debt weapons in order to create additional cash flow. Number 2, paycheck parking. This is where we replace the inadequacy of checking and savings accounts. I want to take another poll if I could. By another show of hands, how many people in here believe that your checking and savings accounts are monetarily valuable to you? Raise your hands. Okay. How many people in here are content with how much they're earning from their checking and savings accounts? How many people in here are using checking and savings accounts? Don't you find that interesting, guys? Okay. This is a system that is strategically designed for us to fall short of our potential, meaning designed for us to fail. The system is designed for us to fail. Did you all get an education in school about money? Okay, I heard one person say yes, that's good. How about credit? How to manage your cash flow, how to borrow correctly. And yet, aren't we encouraged to borrow, guys? Wouldn't you agree that a 30-year loan is considered normal in our country? You know that it's been said that over 50% of people who own homes outside of this country own them free and clear. So we have fallen into this country that believes strongly in borrowing, but we don't learn how to borrow the right way. If we could replace the inadequacy of our checking and savings accounts where our money is working for us literally every day of the year, we would see tremendously more progress being made with the same amount of effort being committed, with literally no increase in risk. In fact, it's a decrease of risk when you have more cash flow, better credit, access to more money. If you're following the bank's rules, you are taking on layers of risk that are completely unnecessary. The third technique that we really focus on is really the result of these steps, which is known as cash flow stacking. This is where instead of constantly focusing on just the asset acquisition portion of what you're doing, we're also going to be simultaneously focusing on the liability elimination. And when you do both, you'll see a substantial growth to the leftover amount of money every month that you have, cash flow, and you'll see a significant reduction of the risk along with the progress being a fraction of the time. So let's go forward and start talking about each of these steps in detail. Optimization of both personal and business credit. My background is one of having studied under the pioneers of this industry. I was lucky enough back in 2002 to have a chance to invest a large sum of money to apprentice under one of the original creators of the FICO credit scoring formula. Are you guys familiar with FICO, that term? Okay. FICO is the Fair Isaac Corporation formula, which, because it was the first algorithm ever created to determine a credit score based on your history of payments, 90% of the banking institutions around the country have adopted it as their source of determining whether or not you're a qualified candidate for loans. So FICO is more important than any other provider of credit. How many people in here have heard of Credit Karma by now? Raise your hands. Very, very well known, becoming a household name, doing a lot of advertising. Credit Karma is a terrific resource, which if you're not using already, I would recommend. However, it's very important to understand the difference between Credit Karma and FICO. Credit Karma relies on an algorithm known as Vantage, which is a completely different formula than FICO. Therefore, the credit scores are not the same. In fact, a lot of people call these your FICO credit scores because they're not real. If you look at your Credit Karma credit scores, you're getting a false sense of where you really are. My recommendation is to use Credit Karma because it's free, but not for the credit scores, rather for the detail inside the reports. It's with this information that we can manipulate a game plan to constantly optimize how you look and sound to the banks. So the key here is rely on Credit Karma. If you go to myfico.com, you can get access to your actual FICO credit scores. It's the only place online that will provide them to you, aside from current credit card providers and potentially banks that you're working with. Some banks and credit card providers may provide you access to one or more of your current FICO credit scores, but they will not provide you access to your FICO credit reports. My recommendation, use Credit Karma for now. If you're at least above a 700 minimum FICO credit score, you can start to get access to the debt weapons that we're talking about. If you don't yet have a 700 FICO credit score, that becomes your first step. So having studied under one of the original creators of the FICO credit scoring algorithm, we learned 12 years ago and beyond just how much power we really have in manipulating our credit. There are 5 ingredients to your credit scores. Most of us, the education stopped well short of understanding all 5 ingredients. If you're anything like me, I was taught that in order to get great credit, it required paying our bills on time. That was about all I learned. Now here's the downside to that. It's valued at only 35% of your credit scores. The other 65% are made up of 4 other ingredients that are obviously twice as important as whether or not you pay your bills on time. Now I'm telling you, you cannot get great credit if you don't pay your bills on time. But if you pay your bills on time and you pay them on time for 20 years, you can still have completely less than perfect credit, and so much so that the banks are uncomfortable lending to you. So we're going to talk briefly today about how you can start to rejuvenate credit. Even if you have perfect credit scores, the banks are looking at things well beyond the scores. We'll talk somewhat about that. Doesn't matter what your current situation is as far as your credit is concerned. What we're discussing as far as these 3 steps are valuable to everybody. So make sure you get your free session even if you have less than perfect credit. 2 big reasons we're focusing on this. Number 1, it reduces expenses significantly. We know this because interest rates get much better when your credit is good. But does everybody in here know that insurance premiums are also determined by your current credit position? Which means that if you never intend to borrow another penny for as long as you live, you'll still have an impact to cash flow based on your credit rating if you want auto insurance or homeowners insurance on your primary residence or investment properties. So it's very important that we keep this credit good. The even more important reason than reduction of expenses is that it enhances our borrowing power. A lot of people fail to recognize just how meaningful it is to have access to as much money as you will need. What does that mean? To me, it means never running out. There's no such thing as having access to too much. And yet, again, another life lesson I was taught growing up was minimize access to credit. Have any of you had that same lesson in life? How many people in here are familiar with Dave Ramsey? Okay? Another financial educator that talks about reduction of credit. Cut up your credit cards. Don't access any more than you need. Pay things with cash. If you are fiscally responsible, this is really great advice. If you are fiscally responsible, terrible advice. So we're going to dive into that here too, because we want to borrow as much as we can and have it available. Proper credit, again, 700 minimum FICO credit score on the personal side, along with the correct business profile, will provide you access to unbelievable amounts of capital. Now, when I say unbelievable amounts, on a personal level, I have accessed roughly $110,000 per year on average for about the last 9 years. So I'm almost exactly $1 million in of availability. At any given time, I'm using anywhere between $50 to $250,000 of this. We use it, pay it back, use it, pay it back, use it, pay it back, and keep up-leveling our cash flow, our income-producing assets. The other $750,000 or more has just sat unused in most cases. Now, we'll use some of these accounts periodically to keep them open and active, because if you're not using your credit correctly, the banks might want to take it away. So in order to keep the account open, we'll use them for things we have already budgeted for, and then we just pay it in full, or we'll pay it down to a very small amount in order to ensure that the creditor gets a small amount of interest, and when they earn a small amount of interest, every 3 to 6 months we'll call and ask for limit increases. And when you ask for a limit increase, and you've paid them a little interest, the chances of being approved for that are much better. Does that make sense to you guys? So my recommendation is that if you are currently using non-mortgage related revolving capital accounts like credit cards, that you pay those balances in full every month, and when you pay them in full, how much interest will you pay? What if it's a 30% interest rate? What happens if you were to pay it down to, say, $50, but let it to revolve into the next month, pay dollars in interest at most, and then the next month pay it in full? And repeat that process every 3 to 6 months when we want limit increases. It's very important when you make that phone call to say, I'm calling to request a credit limit increase. Can I be approved for that based on my payment history so far? I'm in the process of purchasing real estate. I do not authorize a credit inquiry for this approval. Does that make sense? Credit inquiries are common when you want credit limit increases. They want to see if you're the same person you were the last time they gave you the money in the first place. And if you're not, you're obviously not going to be approved. If they say no to that request, what do you think we do? Just move on. I think I might have heard somebody say close. I just want to address that if I did hear that correctly. Never, ever, ever close credit. Never close credit. There are only very rare extenuating circumstances to this. Things that might include an annual fee, and even in that case, I'll usually continue to pay it, because when you close it, it will have a dramatically negative effect on your credit. Does that make sense to everybody? I just wanted to sidebar that. So we want to get access to personal and business credit. Let's talk a little bit about this debt. Debt weapons. We use this term. What the heck is a debt weapon? Debt weapons are both personal and business capital that allow investors like us and entrepreneurs of any type to rapidly improve several areas of their financial circumstances. The first and foremost is always going to be cash flow. Cash flow, guys, is the defining difference between having choices and not having choices. If you've had cash flow before, you know you have options. If you've ever been in a position where you don't have money left over at the end of the month, you know what I'm saying as far as your options going away. Keep in mind that after thousands of conversations with households over the last 12 years about their financial circumstances, this is the #1 ingredient to freedom. And it's been my experience that of those thousands of households I've been lucky enough to converse with, that's really all we're all looking for, is that freedom of choice, being able to go anywhere we want, whenever, and stay as long as we want to. So if you have discretionary income left over at the end of the month, you're able to do that. Over time, the income streams obviously need to be residual and passive. You cannot be transacting your time in order to have freedom, even if you're cash flow positive. The second benefit is acquisition pace. This is going to allow you guys the ability to purchase substantially more in the way of income-producing assets than not using them. If you don't use them, you're obviously relying on other sources of capital, which will almost all fall into this anyway, or you have to save the money. Saving the money is not the road to wealth. Third, safety in the event of emergencies. Being able to protect yourself if things don't go the way you expect them to. And there are a lot of things that we just don't have control over. Kind of a rocky political climate right now. Obviously uncertainty when it comes to economic conditions. So if things don't go the way we want, if we end up with vacancies or repairs on properties that we didn't know about, this will provide you literally a massive slush fund that you can tap into that will keep you safe versus the alternatives, which can be pretty ugly. And finally, when it comes to the debt. Now, we're not going to talk as much in today's conversation about just how important and fancy these debt techniques can be. You're going to see that on our YouTube channel. Literally, the average person we speak with pays their entire mortgage off in anywhere between 5 to 10 years, usually closer to 5. We're talking about not tens of thousands, but hundreds of thousands of dollars in prevented interest costs per property. It is absolutely mind-blowing information, even after a dozen years of teaching it and seeing it. Every time I go through an example with somebody, a case study it still shocks me that this is not taught in school. So your debt-to-income ratios will be much better practicing this, meaning that you're a lot more lendable for the other types of debts that you need in order to advance your investment career. And also, your interest costs will be about 80% less than they otherwise would be. One last time on this disclaimer, if you've had any challenges recently with fiscal responsibility, what I'm teaching is not for you, okay? Granted, this could save you tens of thousands per year in interest costs, but if you're misusing the availability of debt weapons, you'll end up with significantly more debt and in much worse position. So please make sure that you're using this stuff with care. All right, so we're getting up to $250,000 of liquid capital every single year. The low end is $25,000. So usually people will fall in the middle of that. There are anomalies on both sides that will either exceed $250,000 or come in less than $25,000 because we're working on credit and debt-to-income ratios. Over the last 12 years, we've managed to narrow the thousands of types of debt weapons into 16 different groups. These come in secured and unsecured, installment versus revolving, personal and business. We're going to talk a little bit about that here coming up. We're never done adding more to each household collection. So the idea is we want to gather as many of these debt weapons as we can because they all serve different purposes. How many people in here have access to one credit card? At least one here today. Okay. Wouldn't you agree that credit cards are not liquid? Now, they might allow me to get some of the cash available from my limit out in advance. But am I not penalized for that? So I do not consider these accounts to be liquid. What we're talking about are accounts that you can literally write a check with, and it's same as cash. How many people in here have used a home equity line of credit before? Raise your hands. Wasn't it same as cash? You can use it for any reason whatsoever, right? What if you could get something that's just as good as that, but it doesn't even report to your personal credit report? If it's unsecured, that means it's not collateralized. A home equity line of credit means that it's secured against the property. The property is the collateral. If you're dealing with unsecured capital, not only is it much, much safer from respect of if the downturn, when the downturn happens. What accounts do you think were the first that were taken away when the last downturn hit? HELOCs. How many people lost a HELOC in the last downturn? All three of my HELOCs were frozen. And that term just means that you're no longer able to use it anymore. It's not available for use. You just have to repay whatever you owe. When we're dealing with unsecured debt weapons, we're actually able to remain, these accounts are able to remain open and active even when the downturn hits, unless, of course, your personal borrowing strength has gotten worse. If your credit has gotten worse, they'll close it. But if you stay strong, you are the collateral. Your credit is the collateral. So our coaching helps members learn, first of all, which debt weapon is the right one to get, because much like motor vehicles, these accounts serve different purposes. I wouldn't use an automobile to sail. I wouldn't use a jet ski to try and snowmobile. These things aren't the correct vehicle for the right purpose. So we identify which purpose is what it's going to be used with in order to say which one is best, where to get it, and when to apply. Now, when we apply for new accounts like these, what do you think the impact is against our credit? Do you think it's positive or negative? Temporarily negative. Why do you think that is? Anybody have any guesses? The inquiry, that's right. Every time we apply, there's a hard inquiry. You know that this can affect your score anywhere between 2 to 25 points? It's worth 10% of your credit scores are hard inquiries. Normally, and I would write this down as well in this section, you're going to want to reduce the number of debt weapons that you acquire to between 2 to 8 per year. The $25,000 to $250,000 annually is broken into between 2 and 8 new accounts per household. Let's talk a little bit more about these. All right, so I want to share with you guys today some of the nuts and bolts of getting access to unsecured capital accounts that don't report to your personal credit reports. If you are currently generating less than $20 million a year annually, the likelihood of a personal guarantee is very, very high. So on all of our business debt weapons that we're accessing, we're personally guaranteeing those. And you should expect to do the same. Now, when you personally guarantee, what you're saying is, in the event of an unlikely default through the business, I personally will make sure this gets paid. And if you default, it will show up on credit. If you don't default, it does not show up on credit. 95% of the time, it is hidden from view. About 13 years ago, I opened up my very first business debt weapon. It's a revolving account in my business name. It's $50,000, and we have used this to make multiple 7 figures, just this one account. Now, at the time, it was through JP Morgan, through Chase. I'm not certain whether or not they're still offering this same tool. Last time I checked, they weren't, but things come and go inside these banks. This $50,000, being that it does not report to my personal credit, can be completely drawn against. Now, if I have a $50,000 revolving line on my personal credit report and I draw $40,000, $45,000, $50,000, what's going to happen to my credit? That's right. So the utilization ratio, the debt to available ratio, is going to be negatively impacted. Does anybody know how much that affects our current credit scores? Say, I heard it. Say it loud. 30%. How much did I say paying your bills on time affected your credit? Literally, it's almost as bad as missing payments when you have high utilization on your limits. Now, a lot of us have heard various milestones. Keep it below 50%, keep it below 30%, keep it below 10%. The truth is that every percentage point reduction to your utilization ratio is a positive influence to your credit. And every percentage point increase to that utilization ratio is a negative impact. So the best possible utilization ratio is what? 0. Now, if I borrow $40,000, $45,000, $50,000 on a line that's showing up on my personal credit report, my credit scores are going to tank. But what happens if I borrow $50,000 from a $50,000 limit that doesn't show up on my credit? No impact. Now, what if I take that money and I put it in the bank and I season it for 60 days? That money is considered mine. Eligible form of down payment. Does that make sense to everybody? I could literally turn around, buy a $200,000 house, put $40,000 down, and no money has come from my own pocket. Now, we do this around the country. We also do this with a lot of private money first lenders and use the difference from the debt weapons to increase the equity position for that private lender, at which point we will refinance after some general fix-up into a long-term permanent rental. So it's fixed and whole. And the cool thing about that idea is you actually end up with a larger marketplace of inventory because fix and flippers will turn down properties that don't have enough after repair value. And a lot of long-term rental shoppers are not necessarily looking for properties that they have to put much work into. Another really great aspect is that we only have to put about half of the work into these properties that it might take to turn around and flip it. Because getting something rent ready is about half the price of something that needs to be sold ready. Does that make sense? So this is a really cool little strategy that we're using this for. But you can use these for anything. I can use $40,000, $45,000, $50,000 for absolutely any cash flow increase possible. And if it's not showing up on credit, it's also not affecting our debt to income ratios, much less our debt to available ratios. So when that first mortgage lender goes to pull credit to consider approving us for that first mortgage, they see that $50,000 it's not even showing up at all. So no impact against that extra payment. Now, in order to get access to these, write these little tips down. First of all, I have not found all that much value in getting business credit scores. My experience has been that the value comes from getting the proper business credit profiles. And there's a big difference there. So as far as B&B, paydebts, that's not the direction I would encourage you guys to explore first. The very first thing I would recommend you do is, first of all, you've got to have an entity. How many people in here already have an entity registered? Excellent. If you don't have an entity registered, that is a very, very important part of your success. Normally, you'll be required to have 2 years. If you don't have 2 years of history with that entity, then you're a little ways out from being able to benefit from some of these invisible debt weapons. In the meantime, you use some of the personal debt weapons to get things really, really moving, and you'll see that on the YouTube channel. The second thing is when you register your entity, and some of you may kind of think about this and wonder whether or not you've done it right, I would recommend keeping your information, your name specifically, ambiguous. If it's Matthew Pillmore Real Estate Empire LLC, it's hard for me to make the claim that I'm not involved in real estate. Wouldn't you agree? Most of us as real estate investors have this kind of strange temptation to put real estate inside our titles, which I'm not quite sure is necessary when we're just investing. As real estate agents and mortgage professionals, sure. But as far as a real estate investor is concerned, you can be completely ambiguous. Our umbrella company name is VIP Enterprises. Now, if you did Google searching of things like VIP Enterprises, you might find, limousine companies, I'm sure, are probably the number one. At the end of the day, I could go into a bank, and during the last downturn, 2008, 9, 10, 11, 12, we were getting debt weapons then too in some of the toughest lending conditions that we had ever seen in business. And the reason was because we could easily make the argument that we were involved in consulting, that we were easily involved in marketing. Wouldn't you agree that to be a successful real estate investor, you're also a consultant? Would you agree that you're in some ways involved in marketing? You can keep your applications far more specific. In 2008, 9, 10, 11, if you went into the bank and said you were in real estate, what did the bank say? Very difficult to get lending. So my recommendation is set up a business name that's ambiguous. You need 2 years. Next, if your application on the front side matches the application information on the back side, you will not get the loan. What I mean by that is, typically speaking, banks do not want to see the personal information on the front of the application be the same as the business information on the back. Your business phone number should be different than your personal phone number. You'd be surprised how many people have the exact same number that's being used on the applications. This is a super easy solution, guys. You don't have to go out and get another cell phone or set up a landline. You can set up a voice over IP address. You can do that for free through Google. But keep in mind, if you're a bank considering lending somebody $50,000 unsecured, no collateral other than this person has at least a 700 plus personal credit score, that's the collateral. If you're a bank considering lending $50,000 under these risks, you're probably going to double check some of this information. So if you go in and you see this Google business number, you see a business phone number, and you call it just to confirm that it's an actual business, and it says, please hold while we try and locate the Google subscriber you're trying to reach. That's not a real business. The banks want you to be a real business. I believe that you can pay, and maybe somebody in here can verify this, something like $5 a month to customize that application? Is that true? So you can customize voicemail and all that stuff. Now we use voice over IP as well. We use Ring Central. It's a little more expensive, so I don't necessarily want to steer you toward it. But for very little money, if anything, you can get an alternative phone number to your mobile. Same is true with your virtual line, your virtual address. If the back of the application says business address and it's the same as your home address on the personal side of the application, you're not a real business. So how many people in here have ever relied on a virtual business address before? Raise your hand. Guys, this is such a powerful solution. You can literally go out and get companies like Regis, here locally, to keep a business address for you where all of your professional mail can go, and they will immediately forward it to you. There's somebody sitting at a reception desk. It's as if you actually have office space there, brick and mortar, when in fact you're really only paying anywhere between 30 to 65 bucks a month to have your name on the site. So again, for about $70 a month, you can be a completely legitimate business that a bank wants to give money to. Finally, websites and social media. I'm going to give you guys a website that has done wonders for our company for the last 4 years. Write this website down. It's called Fiverr.com. F-I-V-E-R-R, like the number 5 with 2 R's. Basically, this is every idiot in the world that's willing to do absolutely anything for you for $5. Okay? Literally, people are willing to do a lot in certain areas of the world. I would keep this professionally driven in the event that you need a website or you need social media. This is a very inexpensive way to get things kicked off for you and delegate it out. Outsourcing some of your needs is going to be a huge part of your wealth creation. So make sure, again, that you have websites that you're a professional image when you show up to the bank so that you can get access to these invisible lines. We're going to talk more about that during your free session. Now, in order to understand the best part about what we teach, you have to understand that we've been bamboozled when it comes to interest rates. Interest rates have, from the very beginning of our career, been the most common conversation point that we've had. What's the rate? What's the rate? What's the rate? By show of hands, how many people in here believe that interest rates are very important? Okay? We get stuck in it sometimes. I'm here to tell you that there is a second half to this equation that can change everything about your outcome, and it's the term. Take a look at your most recent mortgage coupon and see for yourself how much of your monthly payment on just one of your mortgages is going toward interest costs. We are dealing right now with record low interest rates. Over the last decade and a half, the rates have done nothing but impress us. And yet, when you go to the closing table and you sign just one truth in lending statement that shows how much you will spend in interest compared to what you're borrowing, it is nauseating. I don't care how good your interest rate is. Why is that? Well, you know, you'd be surprised. It's a simple interest loan still. You really are only paying on what you owe. You owe the most in the beginning, so it's very seemingly front-loaded in interest, right? You got this kind of scale. You can look at that here. First of all, I think the biggest problem is we haven't had the education we need, which is why we don't understand interest rates. But what I want to show you guys, and over time teach you, is that it's not interest rates that matter to you. It's the total interest costs that you're paying. The dollars and cents. That's what matters most. How much can you save? What if I could show you how to use higher interest tools that are paid off very quickly to eliminate low interest loans that are paid off over very long periods of time? You understand that a 360-month loan term is a typical mortgage. 360 months. So when we pay that off in 5 years, 6 years, 7 years instead, and we do this through the process of using debt weapons, not just applying extra principal, you guys are going to be shocked at exactly what you can achieve. So let's talk a little bit about this. First of all, this is our YouTube channel here. VIP Financial Ed. Write that down. YouTube.com/VIP Financial Ed. Very important website. Now we are putting out fresh information completely free of charge every single week. We're releasing anywhere between 2 to 3 videos a week right now. There are a number of classes down here under the Becoming Debt-Free playlist. Some of these have tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands of views. I would recommend going in there and checking out some of the more popular to see what all all the huff is about, because it is a very, very important topic matter. You will be very impressed with the mathematics on this. Inside here, we're going to show you the exact mathematics of how we can use these debt weapons to eliminate your mortgages. Not only will we be eliminating the mortgages with these debt weapons, but we're going to be acquiring new properties and new mortgages with these debt weapons. So we'll be acquiring significantly faster, and you'll begin to own them as a domino effect, free and clear, one after the next. Now, while it's an anomaly, we have people now that are paying off houses free and clear in under 2 months. Under 2 months, free and clear. Here's a couple examples that you'll see on there. And by the way, these were randomly selected from the YouTube channel as the first that popped up. We didn't sort through and pick out the best ones. These are completely random, and they're all Colorado people. Jeremy Harmon, 40 years old, during the first 7 months, acquired several debt weapons, used one to purchase a 4-unit investment property, no money out of pocket. That's cash flowing $600 every month, producing an infinite return on investment since it wasn't his money to begin with. And his cash flow since the 7-month start point increased by $900 per month, buying 3 more properties. Josh Hansen, first 20 months, bought 22 properties. Cash flow grew over $15,000 per month, paid off the first rental free and clear, and it cost him less than $6,000 in interest, the entire property. Only required 5 coaching sessions to do this. You can see the full case study, by the way, in a class that we taught with Charles Roberts, founder of York Castle Real Estate. Most of you probably know him. So I would recommend looking for this class on the YouTube channel and watching that full case study. Very interesting. Peter Bauer, Colorado resident, during the first 3 months, accessed a $20,000 debt weapon, raised his cash flow by over $1,000 every single month. Designed a 10-year plan to acquire 10 cash flowing properties and own all of them 100% debt free. Went from having $900 in the hole each month to $1,300 in positive cash flow. Brenda and Randy paid off 2 rental properties, paid off several thousand in credit cards, increased cash flow to $4,000 a month starting at 2. This is the best thing that's happened to my husband and I. It'll make you sleep better at night. And this is not Brenda and Randy. This is James and Amanda. This is during their coaching session, went from $14 to $2,000 a month. Amanda's credit score jumped 150 points. They went from almost losing everything, almost lost the truck and the house, to owning a rental property and starting a business. It's not too good to be true. So this is what we were talking about as far as the amortization schedule. Many people I speak with are considering this the most insidious device ever created by mankind. It's right up there with compounded interest. It truly is designed to confuse us. We think that we're doing well, and it's not that simple, because we're paying the interest here in the beginning. How often, guys, are we getting out of a mortgage and getting into a new mortgage according to the National Association of Realtors? Does anybody know what the average is?
Every 4 years.
Yeah, it's somewhere less than 7 years, somewhere between 3 and 7 years per person, because we're either selling and buying a new home or we're refinancing. So in consideration of that, we're really stuck in this area. So we're going to show you guys how through some simple techniques we can use these debt weapons to leapfrog down the amortization schedule and cut this into small pieces. One example that you'll see in our most popular class is Dan and Megan Albright. This is in the class that has a couple 100,000 views. They'll cut a $283,000 interest obligation on this 30-year loan. This is 5.2%, down to just $72,500. Without any change in lifestyle, without making any more money, exactly where they started. It's just a matter of how they managed their debts. It avoided 21.5 years worth of payments. Phenomenal information. I'm getting to a 2-minute finger hit back here. I will say that if you have non-mortgage and business-related debts, that is going to be our initial focus. We eliminate these balances first so that we can use that cash flow towards eliminating mortgages while we're acquiring more properties. If you have not done so yet, go to getyoursession.com and we will have a one-on-one conversation where we won't be rushed. I'll give you a full hour of my time. We'll discuss your circumstances and where you plan to end up in 5 years, and I'll show you the fastest, least expensive, and safest way of getting there. Okay? Guys, I really appreciate your time today. Thank you so much for joining me. We'll look forward to speaking with all of you on the phone. Thanks.